I've given myself the task to learn Vital as well as I know Serum, and in order to do so, I want to make some of the basic sounds that we all use in Psytrance inside of Vital. Today we're going to be focusing on bandpass plugs, also known as particles. These are these nice crispy background sounds that we tend to layer in the background of our track, specifically in more higher energy parts. So let's dive into the project and have a look at how you make those inside of Vital. Now we already have some kind of an example right here. This is an example that I made in the last video. And here you can hear that it's essentially a sequence consisting out of 16 notes, just playing different tones through a bandpass filter. If you have seen the last video, you'll know that it's exactly that actually. It's some tones from the tone pack going through a bandpass filter, but they're more commonly referred to as particles. Now before we continue, I do quickly want to say that I'm running a holiday sale on my Gumroad right now, and I want to specifically hide my masterclass because I think it's an excellent product. It's almost 24 hours of video footage which I've fully edited and fully commentated on, and I explain everything that I do while I make a track from scratch. I show you throughout the whole production process, the whole mixing process and the mastering process. And there's also a version available which includes the project files for all of the different sessions. As I said, I'm running a sale, so now is the best time to check it out. Link to my Gumroad where it's available will be in the description. Now let's get back into the video. Anyway, to make a similar sound in Vital, what I'm going to do is create a MIDI clip. I'm going to load Vital on the track. And all we have to do is just enable the filter for now, set it to a bandpass. I'm going to switch it to 24 by just clicking there, and then give it some resonance. And what we can do is just use one of the random modules here to modulate the frequency. I'm going to set this to sample and hold, and then set it to the 16 notes that we want. And if you hold down a note, you'll get something like this. This is a start. As you can hear, in this case, it is not gated. This is actually just continuously playing and it's going through the bandpass. If we want the gated effect, there's a few ways of achieving it, but in my opinion, the easiest way is just to use it in the synth itself. And we just set the level all the way down and use an LFO to modulate it. Obviously, we set this to 16 notes. We'll turn down the smooth. And then you get something like that. Now this is made with the saw wave. This is fairly basic. We can do some cool stuff to it though. So for example, let's use the phase disperse here and just set it like this. And we can also apply some FM if we want to. Now it's all still very static, so what we could do to make this even more interesting is using the second randomizer for some of these parameters here. We can even use the third one if we want to be all fancy like this. We just set up the same random type here with the sample and hold 16 notes, and it's going to randomly change these parameters too. Now this is still sounding a little bit boring. That's because there's no effects on this. The main effect that you want is actually a delay. So let's apply that. We're going to set the standard tempo dotted 1/8 and then we'll set it to ping pong mode. This is kind of the classical delay for this type of sound. And that already makes it a lot more interesting. That's because what this essentially does is you can almost think of it as making a bunch of copies of these synths, all positioning them randomly and then playing them together. Yes, it's just delaying the same thing over and over in time, but it's essentially layering that on top of different setups of this synth engine. So you get a bunch of duplicates of the synths just kind of trailing off in volume over time. Now obviously we can add more effects. One very common effect to the particles is something like downsampling. You want to set a nice low drive for that. You get some crispy high frequencies out of that. We can bring those out a little bit more. Let's use an EQ as well. And those are your standard particles. What you can also do is make them a little bit shorter. That way you get a lot more pluckier of a sound. This is often useful for when you're glitching it up if you want to apply glitch effects after it. Today we're not going to do that, so we'll leave them long. And then I'll show you one final trick which is actually really cool. Because everything we have been doing up until this point is essentially a mono, at least if we turn off the delay, what we get is a completely mono sound source. What we can do is use a delay which is completely stereo. Now a delay that I have that actually include this as an option is Echo Boy Jr. Here you can see that by default it loads with this wide option, which is really cool for this kind of stuff. We set it to the same 1/8 dotted, give it some extra feedback. Let's set a number here. And you can hear what it does. It basically takes that copy that we've been hearing before where it's ping pong delaying, but just takes it from the mono signal and puts it in the stereo signal. I think this is a really cool effect and definitely something that you could play with. It's just a little bit different than your standard ping pong delay, which also works as we heard before. Now we can go a lot deeper, we can experiment a lot more, we can use different wavetables, we can use different sound design techniques before it. But what it really boils down to is that we just have a sound that we're playing every 16 note, whether we're doing that with the randomization like this, or in another way with the arpeggiator and using, for example, this random over here, which functions very similar to the note on random in Serum. We're essentially just generating a tone, passing it through a bandpass, and then gating it up in some way. And even the gate is technically optional because if you open it up completely, you just get these sounds connecting. However, I do think myself that a little bit of gating is very, very nice on this type of sound. So in summary, that's everything there is to it. It's just a tone going through a bandpass which is randomly modulated. And the only important processing that you really need to do is a little bit of delay. The rest is also optional and you can experiment with that. So that's going to be the video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you learned something. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.